Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and everyone out there, I hope that you're having a fantastic day because we have a fantastic show planned for you. Where today on the program, we have none other than Derakhshani. He is our computer graphics expert, our CGI expert. He's been working in the field for a long, long time, and of course, he is a longtime Computer America correspondent, longtime professional, and we love that he is willing to lend his expertise to our program here. So, everyone, I want you to welcome on Derakhshani here in just a moment. Now, but before we get started, first things first, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including today's show notes. You'll find articles, reviews, show notes, videos, archives, podcasts, anything that we do at Computer America, you can find at computeramerica.com. And by the way, just before the show, like literally 3 minutes before today's show, I hyped it up all last week, and I finally sat down and did it. It's our Scary Technologies Top 5 Halloween Special, I believe is the name of the article. And it's our top 5 scariest techs that we could think of that affect you, on a day-to-day basis. And if they don't affect you today, hey, they might just affect you tomorrow. So, while we usually like to associate technology with good things, there are some actually very scary things that are happening with technology. We encourage you to go check that out. We're going to put it up. Actually, I believe we have put it up on social media. If you want to check it out there as well, we have a link to it. Follow us at Computer America, wherever social media is to be had. Now, with that being said, everyone, let's go ahead, bring on our guest, and we'll go ahead and get started. So, I apologize for not doing this before the show, but, things happen, live radio. Let's see. So, let's hit that button and give him a call. So, everyone, just one moment, please. By the way, hey, how's your day going? Your day going well? It's good to hear. So, let's see. Should be starting here in just a moment, and hopefully he can hear me. Dariush, can you hear me? And I can hear you, and I can see you. All the better. So, everyone, yep. Sure. All right, so while he's fixing that, we'll go ahead and introduce Dariush once again. So, everyone, if you have not heard any of our segments with Derakhshani, he is Computer America's graphics expert, be it hardware, software, the business of, anything like that. He is well-versed, and of course he teaches. And, well, that echo has totally just catched me, by the wayside. Yeah, no problem about that. But yeah, and of course he teaches, he does this for a living, he freelances and contracts all the time. He's worked on many shows that you've seen before, and overall, just a very fun guy to talk to. So everyone, welcome back onto the program, Derakhshani. Dariush, how you doing?
Having me always good to be on.
Yeah, our pleasure. And hopefully you have the audio thing all managed, maybe just a little bit.
Yeah, I think we're good now.
Oh, hey, you even sound better. That's even
Excellent.
better on top
Right.
of that.
Perfect.
So yeah, perfect. And so first off, I would like to ask, how you doing? How you been?
I've been good. I've been well. Just living the dream day by day.
Of course, always a good thing. And you weren't here because obviously, we kind of had to set everything up. But I just wanted to tell you, just because I want to bring it up because I worked for like 5 hours on this article. We just published an article on our website about the top 5 scariest technologies, that people are having to deal with. Kind of a Halloween thing kind of deal. Why not spook some people? And I discussed in the article about a topic that we discussed, and I wanted to see if you could guess which one that would be. Of all the things that we talked about, what do you think made the list for some of the scariest trends or capabilities of technology?
I'm thinking it's fake humans.
Deep fakes. I'm assuming deep
Deepfakes.
fakes.
Yeah.
Yep,
Right.
deep
Right.
fakes made
CG
it.
humans. Yeah.
Yep, and fake humans. By that, do you mean like artificial intelligence, like just overall fake humans?
That's another one
Yeah, I
for
didn't cover
sure.
that one.
That's up
That one
there.
did not
Yeah.
come. Yeah, that one did not come to mind. So that one's not being covered. But deepfakes definitely did make it in there. And yeah, so if anyone is curious about that, of course, read the article. But we have talked about that with Dariush in the past. So yeah, go read the article because I put a lot of work into it. So reward me with your eyeballs. So with that being said, we are, hey, we're heading to the show here. I'll pull up the topics here in a second. But let's see. So has anything happened since since you last came on? Everything going well for you?
Yeah. I can't really complain.
Perfect.
Everything's going well.
Hey, that's what I like to hear. And although I will say that over the next 2 months, is when we get a little, I don't want to say messy with it, but there's a chance that Dariush, we may have to reschedule here and there for the holidays. I want to remind everyone that Computer America, we usually take like 3 days and the weekend, obviously the weekend off for like Thanksgiving, and then we take off like Thanksgiving. So like it's gonna be like the 22nd all the way to like January 2nd. So our longest break of the year is the holiday. So I want to make everyone aware of that. And unfortunately, a lot of times that messes with our regular correspondence. If we can't reschedule them for another time of the month, then they will certainly be back, let's say in January, if we can't get them in December. So with that being said, I want to go ahead and talk about a number of topics. And you sent over quite a few. I'll have some of my own. And but I think a good place to start, hardware. I like talking hardware with you because, I just don't get that. I just don't have anyone to talk hardware with. So ray tracing can happen on existing cards. Is this a good place to start?
Sure. Let's do it.
Perfect. So I think a good way to start off this article, which if you're watching the video portion, you can see it up there. You can see myself. You can see Dariush. Actually, I need to shrink Dariush a little bit. But if you want to check that out, Tom's Hardware, and a good introduction would be what is ray tracing, just real quick, and kind of how it relates to graphics cards and I guess more specifically video games. And yeah, let's talk about the content of the article having to do with any graphics card beyond that.
Yeah. My thinking with putting that up is the fact that ray tracing's already been done in software, so it's not like a brand new technology that's got to have the brand newest hardware too. Ray tracing has been around a long time in rendering, so now it's a matter of optimizing it so it's fast. So your CPU can handle ray tracing, it's just can it do it at 30 or 60 frames a second? So it's there, and some of the ray tracing can be done on your existing video card.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, when ray tracing first kind of got popular with Nvidia and their RTX line, the R obviously in reference to ray tracing, and their RTX line. And of course, they said that some of their more powerful cards from the previous generation could do it, but like they really made it a point to say that you need this generation of cards to do this hardware, I guess, kind of I don't want to say trick, but this hardware capability, which is ray tracing.
Yeah,
Um,
it's greatly accelerated for sure.
Yeah.
That's without a doubt.
So let's go ahead and talk about that. So reading through the article, World of Tanks, if you haven't played it, I got into it once and then realized that I don't have enough money to play a free game
Right.
because you can buy tanks all day long. But they say here that you can use any recent graphics card that supports DirectX 11. When did DirectX 11, or I should rather say, do you know how far back DirectX 11 kind of supports? Like how many generations of graphics cards back? That's a very specific question, so I doubt that you know it off the top of your head.
Yeah, I don't think I would know that. I just know that about 4 years ago, I tried upgrading my son's computer with an older workstation card that I had.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably from 7 years ago, maybe 6 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't support the latest DirectX at that moment. So I imagine it's 4 or 5 year sort of turnaround, maybe.
Yeah, I think we're up to DirectX 12 is what we're currently at. And it was announced at GDC March 20th, 2014, but it was implemented. So DirectX 12 was implemented alongside Windows 10, if you can believe this, 2015. I can't believe Windows 10 has been out that long.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
It just seems like yesterday. But 2015, and it looks like DirectX 11, if I were reading that right, it looks like it came out with, all the way back in Games Fest 2008, and then it was launched, I think like 2011 or 2012. So you have to have DirectX 11. So any card within the past 7 years, and I'm sure some of the ones that are really far back in the 7 years, some of the lower end 7-year-old cards probably can't do this. But thinking back, like your Titans, maybe your 980 Ti's, maybe your some of those really high end but still kind of old. Are they saying that those kinds of cards can support ray tracing?
Well, it ends up being more of a CPU process than a GPU process
Even better.
in that case. But it really comes down to how the game is coded to take advantage of it. RTX is basically offloading a lot of that calculation onto the GPU, which is great. So this was more just to show that ray tracing isn't a new GPU only sort of thing that you absolutely have to have an RTX card for. It's to say that ray tracing is out there and it could be made faster just on CPU. So if you really think about it, it could be video card agnostic.
Mm-hmm.
And indeed, some of the other reading I sent also includes some articles on how Intel, their graphics chip, may be supporting ray tracing, and how AMD looks to be going that direction as well. So I think it's an overall paradigm shift all around. And, I've been saying it all along, that it is definitely the next step in making games look better.
Yeah,
For sure, without a doubt.
Yeah, of course the and they have a nice little explanatory video here that is even kind of baffling me at the moment. But I will say that just the benefit to graphics that you get, much more dynamic. It's just that idea that you need. God, I love World of Tanks. Anyways, you just need that. You need the hardware to support it. And up until this point, it was always the latest, the best, the latest, the greatest. And now it looks like they're they're doing some optimization, I guess, where it doesn't have to be the best. I personally wouldn't say that this means, hey, why don't you go ahead and not buy the best? Because if you can afford the best, hey, that's going to last you the longest. But at the same time, I'm hoping that through enough, I guess, kind of tricks with the tricks with the coding and tricks with the processor and things like that, maybe it will allow more people to get this. I hope. I don't know.
I hope so too. I think eventually, in several years, it'll just be matter of fact that everything's going to support it.
So and looking at the article here, that they said that this seems like a case of expectation versus reality. When we think of ray tracing, we expect far more than just improved shadows, but we cannot fault Wargaming, who makes the game. Their implementation for improving the shadows is indeed technically done through ray tracing, and should certainly used to be made look better. So that's interesting. Actually, after reading that, so they're not actually. So ray tracing, as you kind of explained it, a while ago, was that it's really how light bounces off different surfaces, different objects, and gives it a more realistic feel. Because obviously, if you have multiple light sources, not everything is going to look, lit from the same angle in relative to where the light is coming from. Mm-hmm. These guys are completely omitting any kind of light kind of deal, and they're only focusing, instead of like reflective surfaces and explosions and things like that, they're strictly focusing on the shadows. Do you think that would have and you've done a lot of, kind of professional work and things like that. I don't know how much shadows really matter to the overall look of something graphically, but do you think implementing only on that?
They help.
Yeah?
They help. I think reflections is really where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
Getting good light reflections and good surface response to lighting.
Mm-hmm.
That's really where ray tracing is going to make the biggest impact for you. Shadows are great. Shadows definitely will make it look nicer than mapped shadows, which tend to be a lot crisper, a lot harder, and not so natural looking.
Yeah.
So it helps.
Yeah, okay.
It helps, but it's not the biggest thing that ray tracing will bring to you. So they've picked one of the easier parts of ray tracing to do for this, which is understandable. It does. I mean, it takes a while to get a good ray trace frame done.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, again, the game with the studio, it's still a very popular game, but I think it is free to play, and it's it's one of those games that has like a yearly subscription kind of deal, and you can buy tanks and microtransactions and things like that. So for a game that has such a limited support, like they don't have like a mega massive game studio behind them. They kind of do it themselves year over year. For them to implement something like this is really, really nice to see. It means that the technology is being democratized. Hey, more people using
absolutely.
it. Absolutely. That's
just
absolutely.
What we want to see.
Let's go ahead and stick to ray tracing. Obviously, we have 3 different topics, and I want to hit each one of these articles piece by piece. And this next one with Sony, and so often this happens, third-party vendors and third parties tend, and I don't know about you, Dariush, but maybe I'm just so engrossed in the technology sphere. And by the way, I won't name the company, but I just got an email who offered to send me a representative from their company. I'm not going to take them up on their offer. It was very kind if they confer who I'm talking about. I'm not going to take them up on their offer, but they're like, this big technology retail organization, not going to say who, is going to leak all of their holiday, all their Cyber Monday, Black Friday prices November 7th. And have someone from the organization on the show to talk about the leaks. And I was like, that's not a leak. That's just an announcement. And I feel like more and more in tech, be it smartphones, be it graphics cards in this case, I feel like whenever you hear the word leak, just think announcement. Like, I don't know what that forbidden fruit angle is, but they're all playing.
Yeah, I think it's titillating. So people think they're getting one up on somebody or getting something earlier than everybody else.
It's almost like people want, like you said, one up. They want to one up Apple. So when they hear leaks of the latest Apple iPhone that was left on a bar in California, and here's all the teardowns, like, luckily the person who picked up the phone was someone who is qualified to completely break it down, analyze the whole thing, and not just pawn it off at the next possible minute.
Right.
Yeah. So leaks aside, and this idea that this next article is a leak, Sony talking about AMD's next graphics card and ray tracing. So before we go any further, Nvidia. They've been all about ray tracing, and of course, Intel by extension. They've also been touting the benefits to ray tracing as well. But AMD has in particular, because ray tracing and, real-time ray tracing and what Nvidia has been proposing has kind of been like I don't want to say a patented thing, because like you said, it's been around for years and years and years in animation and CGI and that kind of thing. But it really seems like it was almost like a patented technology that Nvidia was pushing, and Radeon, or I should say AMD, just wasn't really on board with, calling it the same thing, because, I don't know, maybe Nvidia was trying to capitalize on it. Kind of an about face, though. If the rumors are said to be true, kind of an about face. What do you think about the potential of AMD having ray tracing on their next set of cards?
I think let me put it this way. I think they need to. I think they absolutely need to have ray tracing as soon as possible. Whether they will in the next generation, I think it's fairly likely. I think it's more likely than not, because there's been a lot of buzz about it, but nothing's really been certain. But they have definitely talked about it with the Navi chipset, and I don't know. I think it's more likely than not.
More likely than not that they will have it.
That they will have it, yeah.
So the Navi 20 GPUs are due out next year. I have not been keeping up to date with what Radeon's doing. I'm assuming that they're staying the course and they're trying to really hit that $300 to $500 price mark, as opposed to going for, let's say, something that beats, I don't know, a $2,000 Nvidia card.
Right.
Having a price point that can do that, like, I think the RTX 2060 technically can do ray tracing, but it's like not the recommended settings. It's, kind of low settings, but it can do ray tracing. That one starts at like 350, I think, right? Like, what is the RTX? Let's see. Let's Google that. RTX
The 2060. Yeah, that sounds about right.
I want to say that thing is like, about 350, 300, 350, depending on where you buy it and what deal you get. And for Radeon, if they can come out with these cards to hit, I don't know, 300. Heck, AMD has surprised me in the past. If they come out at 250, it seems like a long shot, but I'm hopeful. And they can kind of start there and work their way up. That would be very interesting for people to to do this. Like, I think this has more staying power than VR Ready. The trademark VR Ready. This seems like a technology that's just going to immediately affect people better than just, hey, you're going to need an entire new console system ecosystem. So maybe.
Yeah, this is true. Yeah.
What price point do you hope that the next ray tracing capable cards come in at?
I think they're probably going to be over $400 for now. I think so. I think you might get something in the 300s, like the mid 300s. But I think for the actual capability, one that's going to give you a decent frame rate is going to be over 4 for the first year, and I think it's going to start coming down, obviously, as it does as ray tracing becomes more adopted in general and more supported by the game industry and the code that they put out for it.
Well, here's my problem with that theory, and I appreciate you, but I will say they're talking about this leak for the PlayStation 5. PlayStation 5 saying it will have real-time ray tracing. I don't see a future where consoles can compete if they don't come in under 400 at the very least, if not 350, 300. So
it all comes down to what is real-time ray tracing, because you see with the World of Tanks example, they've got ray tracing, but it's only shadows. So there's a lot of technical market speak, but I think consoles, I mean, we saw with the Xbox One, it came out at 500. PlayStation Pro was, 400 when it first came out?
Yeah, it was up there, yeah.
Yeah, so I think console-wise, that's the new normal. With these, with this hardware, in the first year, it's going to be around the 400 to 500 range. And the speed of real-time ray tracing, who knows how well that's going to respond in a console,
And beyond that, I like the reason I brought up the cost was because obviously $400 card and $400 console. I will say, though, that these consoles are okay with kind of paying a heck of a lot, because I just had to look it up here. They sold 91 million PlayStation 4s. If they sell, even 10 million the first year, even if they're only making, $10 a card, like, I think they're willing to lose a bit of money or have a very, very slim profit margin because they know they're going to be selling so many units. Like whatever graphics card is going to be inside a PlayStation or an Xbox, that's going to be the most sold graphics card of that generation. So I think that Sony, just by the economics of scale, are going to be comfortable with selling that. I'm shocked that you don't buy the console companies when they say that. I think PlayStation said that they're going to have 8K resolution, 120 frames per second, if not 60. I forget which one they claimed. Real-time ray tracing and all these other bells and whistles that really most computers can't do, and consoles have never been close to doing. You're saying that there's a potential that not all those metrics will be met first, kind of when they first come out.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, the PlayStation 5 is slated for Christmas 2020.
Yeah.
Right, so that's still a year away. A lot can happen in a year. So far be it for me to rain on anybody's parade. But you want to take a look at what real-time ray tracing means, because there's a lot of things that go into real-time ray tracing. There's reflections, but there's also refractions, being able to see through glass and water and things like that. There's also glossy reflections and glossy refractions, which means the reflections can be slightly blurred. Like if you're looking at a polished sheet metal versus a brushed sheet metal, the reflections that you're going to see in the two of them are going to be vastly different, because the one in the brushed metal is going to be a less glossy, a more rough version of that reflection. And that adds a tremendous amount of noise into the render that has to get taken care of in sampling, which takes can take a long time. So real-time ray tracing, just as a phrase, isn't really enough to validate how much are you talking about, because again, with World of Tanks, it's just the shadows, but hey, it's real-time ray tracing of just the shadows.
And sorry to step on you here, but even on Nvidia's website, they have a couple of different games here. Everything from, the trailer that we saw with the Stormtroopers, to Justice, to Metro Exodus, to Battlefield 5, and you can see here where underneath each one they actually put what kind of ray tracing that they do, and for the Stormtrooper. Kind of cinematic that they did, reflection, shadow, ambient occlusion, whatever occlusion is. For Justice, they put reflections, shadows, and caustics. Others, they just put shadows, just reflections, just ambient occlusion. Like, I guess they can pick and choose which ones have the biggest effect.
Absolutely. And the ones that'll have the biggest quality effect are going to be reflections, and then probably shadows, and then occlusion. And occlusion is basically when one object is blocking light from another object. It sounds like, well, that's what a shadow is. But it's I think a finer point with ambient occlusion. When two objects get close to each other, they tend to occlude or block a little bit of light from each other. But in reality, like pure reality, ambient occlusion doesn't really exist. It's a way for computer graphics to kind of simulate a nicer quality of contact shadows.
Right. Makes sense.
So that's ambient occlusion.
No, it's obviously when you play video games, like I feel like I've been playing games for so long that I kind of take how shadows interact and how light sources interact as kind of a granted. I think I would notice the difference when it doesn't act in an unnatural way. Like the more natural it'll be, the more it'll stand out to my, to my jaded brain, I guess, when it comes to video games. So it's very interesting. And again, I hope that Sony, with their PlayStation 5, can do this.
I do too.
Yeah,
I think they will to some extent. It's up to the consumer to find out, how that's going to be different than the other consoles.
I have a bad feeling that consoles are more market than technology, which I think anyone out there would tell you is certainly the case. I feel like at this point, when they say we're going to have real-time ray tracing, I feel like it's going to be shadows. Like shadows for every game out there. It's not going to be, like you said, reflections or anything like that. It's not going to be the full package. It's going to be mainly shadows are going to be it.
Yeah, I think we'll see a little bit better than that in the first generation of consoles with ray tracing. I think reflections will be a part of it. How many reflections? There's reflection depth and iterations. There's a lot of terminology that goes into ray tracing. I'm more than happy to talk about how we optimize renders. Because I'll render, one project I was on many years ago had ray tracing in it, obviously.
Sure.
36 hours per frame is how long that took it. And
and you only need like two
that
of those,
was
right?
at HD. Right. So you need a huge amount of processing power to get that at 60 frames a second.
Yeah. So 60. So you said 36 hours for 2 frames.
For one frame.
For 1 frame. So 36 hours for
at
one.
HD, not even 4K.
Yeah, and so obviously, if you want something to run at 60 frames per second, obviously, you're going to do that
faster.
for cinematics. Like that's something you can do. But when it comes to real time,
exactly,
that's not possible. So
yeah, so you really have to be a little bit educated in what that particular brand of real-time ray tracing means. But I'm hoping that the baseline is going to be shadow work, maybe occlusion work, definitely needs to have reflection in it, at least to some extent.
I'm hoping that, and by the way, is this clearly you need the hardware to run it? That's great. But is this something that is done when you create the game or you create some kind of media, be it a movie, game, whatever? Is this something that is done in the coding, or is this something that is strictly handled by the hardware and you can just turn it on and off? Because if more if PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Scarlet or whatever it's called, if they kind of mandate that every game has to have this at least built into the games, in the future, when we have real-time ray tracing, you could just flip the switches, or if you have a PC that runs a lot better, you can, you would benefit from that.
Absolutely. Let's say I have a 3D scene. I'm able to render that with or without ray tracing at a flip of the switch. So a lot of the assets in the game, the animation, the models, the vehicles, the props, the textures, all of those will work with or without ray tracing. That's not a big deal.
Okay.
Ray tracing comes in with certain types of lights, but those can be turned on and off. And then it's really the rendering process and what it chooses to process and what it chooses not to process.
I'm just hoping that these games are developed with a few of these capabilities in mind, and then if you have hardware that goes beyond a basic console, which even a PlayStation 5 will be, admittedly they'll be engineered to a T. Games will be designed and optimized for this hardware to a T. But
they should
still,
be,
and you're right, they should. Looking at you, Tomb Raider, but I will say that maybe a PC worth at least 1,000 or 2 should be able to run faster and better. And I'm hoping that those kinds of systems, the people who are avid enthusiasts of video games, will be able to get more out of it than I guess the rest of them. I hope.
Yeah, I hope so too.
So Yeah. So with that being said, one last topic on ray tracing. Intel's ZE, and I believe ZE is, or I think that's like the abbreviated version of Xenon. There's ZE, or XE. Wow, what's wrong with me?
XE.
XE graphics reported to join the bandwagon. So, as you said earlier, we've been talking a lot about graphics cards. The first article with with World of Tanks. I think you said that it was offloading some of that to the CPU instead of the GPU. How does the CPU come into play? Because I thought a lot of the graphics work, I thought the graphics card was optimized to do most of the graphics work. Why would they, I guess, kind of offload it to a different a different processor that's not optimized for graphic work.
Yeah, but that's just if the GPU can't handle it. I would think, if you need an extra hand, carrying the groceries, that's where the CPU could step in. Now, I'm just saying, conjecture-wise, they could offload to the CPU. I mean, when I'm ray tracing, probably 95 times out of 100, I'm using CPU rendering and not GPU-based rendering.
Mm-hmm.
So it's how do you optimize for it? You can optimize for it for CPU. You can optimize for it for GPU. You can optimize for it for OpenCL or for CUDA. You can
Yeah.
optimize whichever way you want to go for.
It makes complete sense. But I guess the question is, um, do you think that most people have a better CPU or GPU, or do you think it's
Most people, I think, have a better CPU. When you're looking at the large unwashed masses out there, I think for probably more of the listeners to this show and more of the enthusiasts and hobbyists and gamers, it's probably split whether they have a better CPU or GPU. I have the 9900K, which is a
I
great
want that.
CPU,
Yeah.
but I also have a Quadro 5000. I think it's the Maxwell, so it's not top of the line, but it's a great
But who's
GPU as
complaining?
well.
Yeah.
But who's complaining? Exactly. But, I still end up rendering at the end of the day overnight on my CPU because I have another machine that I can render on the CPU as well. So I've got two machines rendering overnight. The other machine has a much less capable
Mm-hmm.
GPU. And if I render one GPU and then one CPU, I run the very real risk of the renders not matching up the same because some things aren't fully supported in GPU, and it all comes down to what you're rendering with and what I'm rendering with. There's a few small minor discrepancies between GPU and CPU, so I choose to go CPU because I've got more. I can always take over my son's machine as well, and he's got a Titan X, but I'll just be using his CPU to render it as well. So I think CPU probably ends up being more powerful for most people in general. Um, I think you've got to have a pretty good, probably 1080 or above to have a better GPU than you've got.
Yeah.
The higher end i7s.
Yeah, and although I do have to take a huge step back here, I apologize because I misread this article a little bit. Looks like they're talking about their Intel graphics, and
Correct.
I'll admit the only time I've ever thought about Intel and graphics is when computers have an Intel integrated chipset for graphics, which is something that when you read that you can just say, it doesn't have a graphics card. The integrated chipset is the graphics card, and it just means that whatever manufacturer made the system didn't want to pay for a graphics card. So that's what that means.
Pretty much. I mean, it's a good cost saving, and you think about a lot of laptops rely on integrated graphics, and Intel's is pretty good. I mean, I'm not going to run Maya all day
Of
on
course
it,
not.
but it'll get me through a pinch even with Maya. So they're pretty good. So the XC is interesting what they're going to be doing.
So and yeah, sorry to make you repeat yourself, but the XEs are another version of the integrated chipset, or is Intel? Because I think I remember way back when Intel was threatening to get into the graphics, like the GPU market, like they wanted to make their own graphics card.
Yes. Well, I think the lower end of the XE GPUs are going to be integrated into the CPU, and those are more the entry level mobile units. But I would think that from this, they're probably going to branch out into having a discrete GPU working alongside their
Yeah.
CPU in mobile. So
Yeah,
you know,
and again, to step on you, they said that this article from the Intel and the release date, entry level mobile, like you said, all the way up to data center, which is going to be a lot of parallel computing, so it's not the
Yes.
same as gaming. But then they did say including gaming GPUs and even exascale supercomputers. So although I would say
Exactly.
that exascale supercomputer and data centers are almost the same thing, just depending on how big it is. But there it is, gaming GPUs, like you said, a discrete card from Intel. That would be
I
interesting.
think so. That would be interesting. But when you look at parallel computing, GPU has a lot more cores on it.
Hmm.
They don't run it as fast as CPU cores, but parallel uses more
Yeah.
and more and more. So GPUs tend to be lined up better for parallel use. So in server and parallel use, it seems like Intel's Xe seems like they're trying to have quantity
There,
of cores
yeah,
available.
there's something about that feather in the cap for, I don't know, being inside
Mhm.
the best supercomputer, because I think we just hit the first exaflop. Supercomputer just got built, and yeah, it is exaflop, I assume, and just got finished, and that's the first one to come online. And then I think we already have like a 1.5 and a 3 exaflop in the making, and I think Intel and AMD are kind of splitting that one. So obviously they're huge multi-million-dollar contracts, usually
Mhm.
by the Department of Defense and the Department of the Interior, but still, it's almost like bragging rights, saying that, hey, my graphics cards are the ones running the fastest computer in the world.
Absolutely. Big feather in the cap.
So hey, I'm interested
As far
to
as
see,
feathers go, right?
yeah, as far as feathers go, and I'm interested to see what Intel actually has planned, because if they come out with their own line of graphics cards, I don't like. I think Nvidia is in as safe of a place as anyone could be. AMD, they're going to keep chugging along no matter what happens.
Mhm.
I'm
Without a
just
doubt.
curious if Intel can even crack into that market, because I know that they share a lot of technology with Nvidia. I just don't know if they can compete with Nvidia. I don't know. Pretty
I'm not
interesting.
sure. It can happen. You see, Tesla came in and is competing with other car markers, whether it's going to go somewhere or not. And you see, like Uber coming in and pretty much disrupting
You know,
taxi industry. So weirder things have happened.
Tesla though, like, would you count that as a success by now? Would you count Tesla as a success story?
Um, yes, but it depends what you mean by success.
Well,
You know,
so often people are like, look at Tesla, and I think Tesla is a success story. But I
Mhm.
also want to hold it up as something that whenever someone says, "Oh, we're going to start a new car company, we're going to compete in a very, very established market," I like
Right.
to point it to Tesla and say, "Here's a company that has made billions of dollars, has gotten investors of tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars in investments, has all the free publicity that they could ever want. They have a charismatic head who makes headlines for good or for
Hmm.
bad.
Good or
Like,
for bad.
yeah, like they have everything that you could ever hope for from a car company." And
Hmm.
you still hear stories about them struggling. They're going to have to lay people off. Their
Hmm.
plans are pushed back by a couple of years. Like, they're still struggling in some manner. And it's like, if they can't do it, then what the heck is a Faraday
Well,
Future? Was another car company, or one of these other,
sure, Fisker, for example.
yeah, Fisker. Like, so many of these
Hmm.
other car companies are like, oh yeah, we're going to be the new Tesla. It's like Tesla can barely be the Tesla.
Then, yeah, no, this is true. It's tough.
Yeah,
The
it is.
margins in automobile industry is not great, but Tesla has the most advanced car that there is.
True. Uh,
Period.
don't get me wrong. I want a Tesla. I'm completely with you. I want one.
Hmm.
I hope that Tesla makes it. I hope that they continue to make amazing cars and put the others to shame for not utilizing technology to its fullest. And I don't
Yeah.
mean the self-driving part, but things like
Oh, just in general. Yeah. I mean, I used to be a diehard BMW driver. I thought I would never drive anything other than a nice BMW. But now I'm actually really kind of mad at BMW and Mercedes and everybody else
yeah.
because all of the stuff that my Tesla has is doable. in the other
Sentry,
cars.
yeah, things like dog mode or whatever.
Dog
that,
mode,
yeah,
sentry mode, and
It's possible.
even absolutely, and it should have been pioneered by a BMW, for example, or a Lexus, but it wasn't because of the complacency and the cost that it takes for an industry that big to really move ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, my BMW felt like its infotainment center was lagging behind my wife's Honda, and that was driving me crazy. So I mean, the Model 3 I have now, just the hardware and what you can do with it, and the fact that it updates and adds new features, it's just that should be the paradigm for cars already,
Yeah.
just in general, whether it's a gas or not. So I think, do you know how long Tesla's been around?
I think they were announced. I want to say 2009, 2010. When was Tesla?
2003. 2003. So they've been around longer than you think they've been around.
Yeah.
And that's what's important. Part of what their, I think, issue is that they're branched out a little bit too much in solar panels, and that is a segment that's getting hammered.
Solar panels, Solar City, all that good stuff. Yeah.
Right, when they bought Solar City and folded it into Tesla. So there's a diffusion of that. There's a diffusion with with Elon Musk. I think he's really disrupting, and he's saying a lot of great things that he wants to do. There's a little bit of reality checking that's going to happen no matter what, but it is hands down an amazing car. But it's new. Everything's new about it, and that's what's important to understand.
It's not just that it's new, and we're going to transition away from Tesla here in a minute, because I could talk about Tesla for
all day long. Absolutely.
And really Elon Musk. Like, if nothing else, Elon Musk, he does stupid things. He does bad things. I'm not going to take away from those.
I mean, who doesn't?
I know, and I'm not going to put him on a pedestal either. But I do want to say, as far as car company CEOs go, the CEO of BMW, of actually, let's say, Daimler Auto. Like the last time I heard about them was when they were cheating on their emission scandals for diesel, in Europe, and they had to recall millions of trucks. The last time I heard about Elon, he started a tunneling company. He sold a flamethrower. He called someone some bad names on Twitter, which is bad. And then he also said that our new car is going to be completely self-driving by 2020. Like, I'm excited to hear about Elon Musk, and Tesla in general, as opposed to
absolutely
any other car company.
My car drives itself for the most part. I can throw it on autopilot and go from one exit to the other, and never really have to. I'm touching the wheel the entire time, obviously.
Think. Your brain's on cruise control.
It can do it. It can absolutely already do it, but there's a lot of governmental things. There's a lot of larger societal issues to take care of. I love autopilot the way it is now, because in bumper to bumper traffic, I can, not fully, but I can kind of check out. I can turn on autopilot, and I don't have to worry that the person in front of me is going to stop short, and I'm not going to be paying attention because I'm, trying to bring up the next track on the radio.
Yeah, if cars are going 5 miles an hour, then not much chance.
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
absolute no-brainer. Sure. And even when I'm changing the radio or I'm getting my sunglasses or whatever, I'll throw it on autopilot for the few seconds that I'm going to be half distracted.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super helpful. It's super helpful, and it's something that all cars could easily already have.
Right.
There's a lot of collision avoidance systems and stuff like that. And it all comes down to all of these great ideas were put into a car, and somebody had the nerve to stand up and say, these are the things that cars should have. So if Tesla's around or not, they're going to have an indelible impact on how cars are going to be, because you're looking at the Porsche Taycan coming out soon, and the Polestar from Volvo, all of these places that we're kind of fiddling around and thinking electric cars are for, the Hollywood elite and for golf carts and really granny driving people.
Yeah. Isn't that weird how, like, the public didn't know what they wanted from an electric car until Tesla
hmm
said, "Here's what an electric car can do."
Yeah, because it can do what your regular car can do, but better. I would not want to buy a Chevy Bolt, for example, from way back when, or a Prius.
Yeah.
Good, heaven forsake. Because those cars just they don't pack the sort of excitement that I'm used to in driving a BMW or a Lexus or,
So
faster
I
driving
I will,
cars.
I will
So.
cap off this conversation with this show brought to you by Toyota Prius, driving Prius. Now, our next topic, and we're going to go ahead and transition oh so not smoothly to NVIDIA's next gen Ampere graphics cards could be just around the corner. And I'll be honest, hearing about this before you mentioned you have an Intel 9900K processor. The reason I'm not jumping into that, because it is about time to upgrade, my work computer, is that I'm looking for that next leap in advancement. And for Intel, it's probably going to be moving from the 14 nanometer to, I think they're working on the 11, I think is the next.
Yeah, 11 or 9 I heard as well.
Yeah.
Either way, they're looking to shrink the die basically.
Yeah, and that's what and shrinking the die, like it's more than just a gimmick. It literally means that it's more efficient. You can cram more,
Yes. Yes.
switches on there, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
it's an overall good thing, and like that's what I'm
It
waiting
is.
for with Intel and their processor. So that's the CPU side. I did not think after the RTX and after the Titan XP and whatever new thing, or they're up to like the Titan something else. Anyways, they just went to like the Pascal system or the Pascal architecture not too long ago.
Mhm.
I did
The
not think I was going to
Ps,
be
yeah.
I did not think I was going to be hearing about anything from Nvidia for a couple of years, let alone Ampere. So, what is this?
Yeah, I think they refresh every so often, every 2 years,
hmm
perhaps they go from one, because they went from the Maxwell to the Pascal, and now the Pascal is going to go to the Ampere, and I think it's about a 2 to 3 year sort of cycle.
hmm
And it doesn't necessarily mean that the die is shrinking with
Right.
every single iteration. This one looks like it'll be going down to 7 nanometer process, which is great. Which is going to make it more power efficient and just faster and less power hungry,
Yeah.
which is great because that means you can still
Well,
juice it
so
with a lot more power and then get even better
yeah,
performance.
what I always tell people is that when the die shrinks, you can fit more logic gates onto the die, so
Mhm.
you can cram more, more stuff, whatever you want to call it, in there, and it's more efficient. So, like you said, it takes less power, but of course, you can put the same amount of power. And the one that everyone should always know about is that if you use more electricity or the same amount of electricity, you're going to have heat. Heat as a byproduct. If it's more
Right.
efficient, less heat issues, and you're going to be running cooler. Or in Dariush, in my case, we're going to run more electricity through because hey, we have to be 80 Celsius regardless of what we do. So
Absolutely. Right, right. You want to push it as far as you can.
yeah. So
Absolutely.
it'll be faster with more electricity, but more efficient means that less heat problems. You can just be faster with it. So all this Nvidia putting together. Let's see, launched in the first half of 2020. Buy your stocks now, according to the latest gossip through the grapevine. What were they kind of I guess kind of insinuating here? Because again, all this leaks and rumors, as far as you want to take that. But
hmm
what are they insinuating that it's going to be other than the 7 nanometer?
It's just going to be a little bit better. End over end, I couldn't tell you what kind of percentage in performance that you see. I would get anywhere between 20 and 35% better
hmm
with the same, level of card going up. Right now, they're on the Turing cards. That's the
Yeah.
RTX. I imagine the Ampere is going to have. I would hope that the Ampere would just be RTX, period, and that there are no non-ray tracing options. I think that's really where we should go. So instead of having 1080 versus 2080, you just have 3080, and there
Well,
it is, and you're
that's
done.
yeah, that's kind of what happened with VR ready graphics cards. The idea of VR ready. Uh, that kind of went away, not so much because VR wasn't catching on and so on and so forth. It went away because your GTX 1060s,
Can do
and
it
heck,
now.
I think even the 1050s at some point were certified to be VR ready. So every iteration of the graphics card was capable of running VR. So you're saying that with this, it's not going to be, it's not about ray tracing capable. It's that everything is, ray tracing
Yeah,
capable.
everything. Yeah, I would love it if it were just the one
Yeah.
SKU, and you don't have to worry about if it's ray tracing or not. Just the way I would love for all games to be built, all the assets built, and all the coding optimized for having ray tracing or not having ray tracing.
I do like how this article, and I never put it this way in my head, but it kind of makes sense. And of course, it would mean that the company could head off AMD's infamous Navi-based Nvidia killer, which is also rumored to launch around the middle of next year. If that does indeed pan out, then of course AMD's GPU Hitman will have the wrong target in its sights. It's some kind of spy movie shenanigans where it's like, haha, you killed the wrong person.
Exactly. Spy versus spy.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot
it's just a little
of
tongue-in-cheek,
marketing
but
speak. Yeah, and it's fun, but you know what? In the end, get the best card you can afford, no
definitely.
matter who it comes from.
Definitely. So let's see. Anything else in this article? Produced at TSMC, which a lot of people haven't heard of, but they're like the number one
They're
biggest.
great. I bought stock in them probably, let's see, about 15 years ago
I was about
now.
to say, if you did in the '90s, you're a rich person right now.
Yeah, I didn't put that much into it, but I think it tripled
Yeah.
what I invested in it a while ago, and that's not bad.
No.
I have other investments that have been flat for 10 years.
I
So.
know. You invest all your money in GE, and look at you go. And it sounds just like my mom, who back in the '80s invested a couple $100s in Starbucks because she heard about this great up and coming place. Boy, did she kick herself for that still. But TSMC, they're a great company that makes a lot of
Great
really
company, yeah.
the most graphics cards in the world. So I think overall, let's see. So, which can in turn mean that the successor to the RTX 2080 doesn't blow such a big hole in your bank balance. So, hopefully, they're saying here, they're hoping it's a bit cheaper and easier to produce, even though it's a different production all over. So,
Yeah. I think the smaller die might make it a little more efficient for them to, or cost effective.
Yeah. Efficiency seems to be the name of the game. I'm hoping that the price kind of drops a little bit because I'm not looking forward to graphics cards staying at the $1,000 price mark. Like if we can get back to where the high end is 700 and the mid range starts around 250, I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen though. The Pandora's box is already open, just like with phones.
Yeah.
As soon as phones start hitting $1,000, they're going to stay.
Are you telling me that you did
and
not
go above
immediately go out and buy the Galaxy Fold for $2,400?
Oh, good Lord, no.
Oh, okay. Weird. You must have been one of the only ones that doesn't have a Galaxy Fold.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Everybody runs out and gets a $2,500 phone.
Yeah, who doesn't? So with that being said, let's see. We have about a minute or two left. So let's see. We have one more quick story here we can do real quick. GraphicSpeak, great publication. I always love it when you kind of bring them up. GraphicSpeak talking about drawing and painting app Adobe Fresco launched for the iPad. So, what about this caught you?
Well, I think the more an artist feels like they're dealing with something that works like paint, the more apt they're going to be going digital. So I think any program that gives you the power of feeling like you're really smearing paint on a canvas is going to speak very loudly to artists out there. And, there's a whole generation of artists growing up purely digital and not getting into canvas. But, the old school diehards, they may look at digital and be like, that's a whole new paradigm for me to understand. But this sort of offering makes it a lot easier for people to bridge the gap between analog painting and digital painting, because in the end, it's a creative effort and understanding light and shadow and composition and how your eye travels along your composition. These are very fundamental things that translate no matter what medium you're in. So, but this just helps bridge a very important gap, because it's one thing to be able to sketch and draw on a tablet
Yeah.
or on a computer. It's an entirely different experience to deal with oils and acrylics and watercolors and
It's
that whole ritual.
It's something
involved.
that I do want to say. I had an artist friend who turned me on to a couple artists. I actually invited them on the show. I'm hoping to hear back from them soon. Who made that transition from traditional artwork, and now they do, hey, actually it'd probably be close to your arena with, traditional artists that now do digital. They do movie posters. They do actual like motion animation kind of art, that kind of thing. Like, I'm trying to get artists on the show that have jumped that gap from traditional to digital.
Interesting.
And,
yeah.
And I think that, programs like I invited ArtRage. I don't know if you've ever seen the product ArtRage. Very similar to this. And being able to do that, to make it look traditional, but do it in a digital way, very important. So I will say,
I think
Dariush,
so too.
yeah, this show flew right on by, and I want to thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Absolutely.
And talking to us. So I'm happy that we could get you on. Again, we'll talk later about your schedule, make sure everything works out. But look forward to seeing you back on here. Until next time, have a great one. Thanks so much.
You as well. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. Everyone out there, we'll have links in the show notes if you want to hear more from Darius. And in the meantime, everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.